Yeah, let's pick the pace up. Now, I want you guys to have your questions. I want you to have your comments because that's how everyone learns the best. Is when, especially if I'm not making something clear, and one of you has a question. Probably a lot of you have a question, and if nobody feels comfortable asking it, everyone will sit in the dark. So, and your thoughts add to the class. You'll have an idea that I hadn't thought of because I don't think everything. I know it seems like I'm pretty amazing. I always look to Lorraine to see her reaction when I say something about myself like that. She always rolls her eyes louder than anyone else. But if you have a comment or question, let's keep them coming. It doesn't matter how long this class is taking. We're halfway there, but we've got a good system going. All right, what chapter are we in? 13, chapter 13. Okay, so let's kind of, just for a moment, look at the beast again from verse 1. We're not going to go over verses 1 through 4 again, but it'll help us get the preamble to verse 5. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And you know what? We're going to Pipestem tomorrow, and I'm very excited. Me and my family are going to go camping. I forgot to tell you guys that. We're very excited. We love Pipestem. If you've never been to Pipestem State Park, it's only my favorite place on earth, probably. I grew up there. And I'm hoping that I'll see a black bear. That's what made me, because everyone else is seeing black bears. I don't believe they actually exist nowadays. You know, I think everyone's lying because I've not seen them. All right, a bear, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. Come on, stay on target, guys. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" All right, we're going into verse 5. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. We've seen that number before, haven't we? It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them, and authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on the earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword he must be slain. Here is a call for the endurance of faith of the saints. I like how this section ends with that line. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. What is the book of Revelation about? Victory in Jesus. The ultimate goal is to get to the ultimate goal, which is heaven. And only through Jesus can we have that victory. Though it seems that we are being killed all the day long, we are like sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. Romans chapter 8. Well, here we have the second half of this beast. Now, the beast was given power by the dragon. The beast is Rome. The beast was given power by Satan to try to stop the work of God in its progress. Because Satan, as we saw in chapter 12, Satan knows that his time is short. He has got to do this before the gospel spreads so far that he'll never regain control of the world again. The beast is given a mouth, speaking great things, blasphemies against God. He is also granted authority to continue for 42 months. What is 42 months? 3.5 years. And what does 3.5 years mean? Incomplete, imperfect is half of 7, right? Therefore, it's not there to completion. So let's first talk about the blasphemous mouth. that this particular beast has. We talked about it last week. I believe Don was the one that brought it up. Last week we talked about a very blasphemous thing that happened in the Roman Empire. What was it? Blasphemy means against God. What major blasphemies did Rome consistently do? Emperor worship. We are no longer dealing with just a man who rules us. We are dealing with a God who controls us in their minds, right? Therefore, when Caesar is telling you to do something, it is more than just law. It is godly law in their eyes. They look at Caesar as if he is to be worshipped, not just to be served as, subservient to the king or anything like that. All of the Caesars were very much like that. All of them had images made in their name and then that people were to bow down to. They were to worship, give anything they can to. It was much more than just a kingship. It was, Roman godship. If you were a Caesar, you might as well have been in the pantheon of Roman gods, because you were in their eyes just as important. If not just as important, you were just underneath. The blasphemous claims of the Roman emperors were that they accepted and promoted divine honors, that the divinity of God, they were their honors to have. They were their honors to bestow. They had titles such as Sebastos, which is one to be worshipped, Divus or Divus, which is godlike, Deus, which is God, and Theos, which is God. These are their names. These were the words they wanted to be called. It's kind of similar to how we have the Pope gets a new name because the Pope has to be named after some other saint, I guess. I've never honestly understood the Pope situation. But so that's one thing that I'd like to look into, just to understand why they go about that route. Well, a very similar way, the Caesar gets different names: Sebastos, Divus, Deus, and Theos, meaning the empire exalted itself in opposition to God. We are the world authority, therefore we are the gods of this world. We kind of see something like that throughout history, but nothing to the extent of the Roman Empire. I mean, the Persians, they thought of their king as God. The Assyrians thought of their kings as gods, but nothing to the extent that the Romans thought of their Caesars as gods. Well, here we have this beast that was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. These haughty and blasphemous words are, "I am God, you will worship me like one." Does that make sense? That's where the haughty comes in. The blasphemous comes in that they think that they're actually godlike. But they're haughty enough to think that you have to worship me. Now, we did notice the beast's authority is limited. It's limited only for 42 months. So who limits it? God. Satan doesn't, why would Satan limit the authority of the beast? Why would Satan say, "I'm going to give you 42 months to get this job done. If you can't get it done, forget it. I'm just going to stop trying anyway"? Huh? No what? No, Satan ain't going to do that.
His made God from the beginning, Genesis, to destroy everything that God had done, and his plan of salvation to man.
Mm-hmm. And if he could just stop one portion of God's plan, it would all fall apart, right? God's not infallible if he could just stop one portion of it. So no, he's not going to give the beast 42 months to do it. He's not like one of those bosses where I'll just find a new beast. No, he is saying, you are the world power. If I can't use you to do this, I'm not going to be able to use anybody to do this. So no, he's not looking to give him 42 months, right? So you're right in saying that his rule his authority is limited by God. Satanic authority is temporary, and I would say controlled by God. How is Satan's authority controlled by God? Let's say God gave him free reign, took him off his leash. Just allowed him to do anything. He can't. But does God allow Satan to work sometimes? Mm-hmm. Job is the perfect example of someone a story in which God allowed Satan to work or do something, but he limited him. Limited him. Boy, that just kept going. Mm-hmm.
Bag.
Yep.
That was I thinking. God got the lead on the devil.
It's just like that.
Yeah.
And the equivalent expressions here we see 42 months is we've seen elsewhere. 1,260 days, 3.5 years, or times, and time and a half. That's 3.5 years. It represents a limited period of suffering and persecution, a season when evil appears dominant. Now, in the world, evil many times appears dominant, right? But is evil ever dominant? No. Evil cannot conquer God. Evil cannot stop the power of Jesus' sacrifice and his blood. And evil cannot take us out of God's hand. Only our choice to be evil can pluck us out of God's hand. Now, there's a historical application of what we're seeing here. Mike?
I guess clarification. Evil can be dominant because God allows it to be dominant for that period, or
I would say appear dominant because still God is over it.
correct.
God is not controlling it, but limiting it. So I would argue that yes, it appears dominant, but God is still there and God is very much in control. That evil will never overcome him. Anybody else have any other thoughts?
Look at Noah's day.
Say again.
Look at Noah's days.
Mm.
Man became so evil.
So evil.
I mean, every thought was evil
Continually.
continually. I mean, they woke up evil, they slept evil. And Satan, it was a field day for him because Satan didn't control them, but those chose darkness. Jesus said in the gospel that men love darkness rather than light.
Mm-hmm.
We as humans, we choose what pleases us, and light controls us. We don't want to be controlled, and that's what happened in the days of Noah. That's what happened right now. Is what happened in Jesus' time. Men does not want to be controlled with righteousness from God, and they want to do their own thing.
And they don't understand that that's just control from wicked.
That's right. They want to do their own thing. That's the bottom line.
Yep. Now, I do have something I need to correct. I was wrong on my timeline this entire time, and I apologize. As it turns out, Nero does not take place right after the fall of Jerusalem, and for some reason, I've had it in my mind this entire time that his reign and persecution took place after the fall of Jerusalem, but it actually takes place just up to the point, or just before the point of the fall of Jerusalem. So that actually explains more of why this beast would represent the mortally wounded head of the beast could represent Nero, because he had already happened, right? And when he was assassinated, Rome was thrown into a couple of years of absolute chaos that honestly should have taken Rome down. But because it continued on, because it made it through this incredible turmoil and political terrorization and several leaders in a single year, because it was able to get through that, people looked at it as some sort of miraculous regrowth, miraculous healing, and that's why they worship and follow the beast, because they were able to make it through that. So historical application of this limited time would be the Nero's persecution, which lasted approximately 42 months. It was from November or mid-November of AD 64, and he died in early June of AD 68. Yes, we are at that point now because of the Roman calendar. We can almost pinpoint that. We can pinpoint that deeply when things were now, and that was 2,000 years ago, right? But this is the historical application of the beast's limited authority. It will continue on. It will try, and the Roman emperors will get worse and worse, and you'll have some pretty terrible people doing very, very horrible things to Christians, but it'll all eventually come to an end. Now, we will actually see eventually, as Don and I have talked about a few times now, the Roman Empire will ultimately realize they cannot defeat Christianity, so what will they do? They'll merge. They'll make Christianity, and I'm putting it in quotes, their own state religion, and then they'll make what is now the Catholic Church, which is worldwide. And it is just as much and just as dangerous to have those levels of misdirection in the word as it is to completely deny the word. But we'll talk about that another time. All right. Verse 6, he blasphemes. It opened his mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. The beast blasphemes God's name, God's tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. This opposition is extending against God himself, his house, and his people. If we go back to Romans chapter 12, we see they started worshiping the dragon and the beast back here. Notice in chapter... Nope, I apologize. It was 13. That's a typo. I thought that was weird. In chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns, blasphemous names on his head, and the beast I saw was like a leopard, and one of his heads was mortally wounded, and as it seemed miraculous that it was healed, the whole earth marveled and followed the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, for he had given authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" True worship is a spiritual service. It's a devoted obedience to God. That's what true worship is. That's what we do here. When we're worshiping God, it is showing a true obedience to him, and it is a spiritual service. The contrast of this, the worship of the beast, meant submission to worldly power over Christ. It represented, forget everything that these crazy people are talking about. There's no way this man died and rose from the dead, but we're actually seeing it with the Roman Empire. We want to follow these guys. And it's taking in what Satan would have them take in over what God would have us take in. We talked a little bit about this last week. The Roman emperors, the Caesars, if you went up to them and said, through you, people are worshiping Satan, they'd probably kill you. They would look at you as saying, no, they're worshiping me, and how dare you bring someone else into this? You think they're worshiping someone else through me? I am the end-all, be-all. I am where the buck stops. But that's not what's going on, is it? We see from the book of Revelation that it is through Satan's doing that these powerful men have taken such great control of the hearts and minds of people. This actually goes back even farther than that, though, as we see Israel rejected Christ. Now, we've talked many times about the Israelites and how it doesn't make any sense that they could have been the ones that saw the parting of the Red Sea, crossed on dry land, watched it pour back over the Egyptian army and completely annihilate the Egyptians chasing them, and then turn around and look at the wilderness and say, oh man, we should have just died over there on the other side. It's crazy, right? Well, these Israelites, the people of Jerusalem, the people of Judea, did not like Rome. They were in constant conflict with Rome politically. but they were allowed to do their own thing. Rome actually looked at the Jews for a while during the Republican era. They looked at the Jews for a long while as their religion has been around so long, there might be something to it. So we're going to let them do their thing, but everyone else has to follow our gods. Well, the Jews were allowed to continue on. It's kind of fascinating how that happens, right? Because eventually we'll come to Christ. But the Jews were allowed to continue on, but they didn't get along with Rome. They were taxed heavily, and they had to live in very particular ways, in Roman ways, that the Romans would come in and take over a lot of their money and a lot of their trade goods and things like that. And they didn't like them. But when Jesus came, claiming to be the king and the Son of God, and they didn't like that, they would say something as we see in John chapter 19. Who wants to read John chapter 19 for me? In verse 12 through 16, sorry. Who wants to read? All right. John chapter, what did I say? 19, 12 through 16. Oh, Jesse, I didn't know if anybody. 12 through 16.
Okay. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." But they cried out, away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he delivered him to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus and led him away.
Wow. These are the people that don't really care for the Romans, and they don't want Rome over them. They're Jews. They're proud. They have Abraham in their lineage. They don't need no Caesar from another country ruling over them. Until Jesus comes along and they're, no. You call yourself a friend of Caesar? We're a better friend of Caesar than his own governor here. And he says, they say, we have one king. We have no king but Caesar. Isn't that messed up? They rejected the Messiah that they've been waiting for. And most importantly, the chief priests rejected the Messiah that they knew about, should have seen the signs for, and watched for his coming, and said, no, we have Caesar. We don't need you. This is the Jewish leadership choosing allegiance to Caesar over Christ, despite their history, despite the rebellions that have already happened and the rebellions that are going to happen, that are going to ultimately lead to Caesar destroying them. This is apostasy of Jerusalem. By embracing Caesar over Christ, they aligned themselves with the beast. So when it says the whole world was worshiping and following and marveling at the beast, it doesn't just mean those outside of Jerusalem. It means the Jews themselves, except for that 144,000 who were following Christ, who knew who the Messiah was when he came, who was waiting patiently for him, and then accepted them as the one true Son of God and their Savior when he claimed it. So here we have, back in Revelation chapter 13. Anybody have any thoughts or comments so far? Marcella? That's true. I like that. She says in this one instance, it shows their honesty in who their allegiance is. Because many times they lie about who they were really. I mean, they were really deceiving people. I mean, their allegiance was to themselves and actually then therefore to Satan more than anybody else. But they would claim and pray in the corners and have the best seats in the feasts and be at the synagogues early and make sure everyone knows by the length of their phylacteries and their fringes that they are godly people. But this right here shows the true honesty of who they were really allegiant to. Absolutely. So we have here the beast warring with the saints in Revelation 13:7. Now we notice the beast is permitted to make war with the saints and to overcome them temporarily. Rome, as Satan's agent, Satan persecutes the church through the Roman Empire. Now, Rome will think that they are doing it on their own, but they are actually acting as the earthly instruments of the dragon. Excuse me. We can go back to the persecution under Nero again, and Christians suffered very severe and harsh persecution. Later on, throughout the persecution of the Romans, Paul was beheaded, Peter was crucified upside down, and Christians were thrown to lions, burned alive, and tortured in horrendous, awful ways. If you've never looked at it, I didn't put as many notes here as I did when we were talking about the desolation of Jerusalem. But if you have some time and don't have a weak constitution, get into how the Romans really, truly crucified or persecuted Christians. It was devastating. They did some horrible, awful things to them, including covering them in molten metal and other things. I mean, they did some awful, horrible things to Christians in that persecution. And it looks like they're going to have a temporary triumph over the saints. In verse 7, it says, it was also allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. It doesn't just say it was given authority to go out and try and hurt them. It says, and to conquer them. The beast appears victorious for a little time, 42 months, a partial time. But God still limits the duration of this persecution. Worldwide authority is given to the beast among every tribe, tongue, and nation, meaning the broad reach of Roman influence and persecution was going to be the whole known world. There will come a point where Rome pretty much owns everything. And I mean, it is amazing how Rome did it too. We saw so many fast-moving civilizations come up before Rome. The Persians moved the Babylonians moved pretty quickly, but it was still slower than the way the Medo-Persians moved, and they were still slower than Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was like a cheetah rushing through everything. But then along comes the Roman Empire, and they get so much more, so much faster, and they hold it for a very, very long time. This is the broad reach of the Roman Empire and persecution. Yes, Don?
You know, too, let's look at it this way. Rome was the largest empire at that time, and God gave authority to persecute the Christian for a reason why that to spread the gospel. They went out everywhere, taking the word, spreading the gospel. And you look at the whole of Roman Empire, I mean Spain, Middle East, everywhere. It went everywhere. India, Africa, everywhere that the Roman had conquered. Roman was known for their highways, and they went spread the gospel.
It is amazing how God took advantage of something that the Romans were able to create, those roads, those highways.
Yeah, as God, I mean, God knew. It was God's plan. I mean, I can't really explain and tell people that God is a God, an infinite God. He can look toward the future. I mean, this is going to happen. That's it. This is going to happen.
Yep.
I just can't imagine.
We can't fathom that, can we?
Fathom that. I mean,
we can try to figure it out and try to understand it, but our limited minds will never be able to understand the mind of God. Absolutely. All right, well, let's finish up this section here, and then next week we will get into 11 through 15. I don't mean to rush through the good part of all of it. The good part is how this ends is it says all who dwell on the earth will worship it, the beast. That doesn't actually sound like a good part, does it? Everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Victory belongs to God. It will always belong to God. The Lamb was slain from the foundation of the world. The Lamb was recognized by God as the plan put in place from before the foundations of the world to save people. Sorry, Mark.
Sidebar question. This is probably going to sound ridiculous.
No such thing.
They're
Except
talking
for
about
from you.
people worshiping, Rome there and all that. I've often wondered, okay, say do I go to a friend, my neighbor's funeral tomorrow, and they say, let's all pray, and it's a Pentecostal prayer that's completely alien to what the Bible says. If I bow my head and say my own prayer, am I give the appearance of worshiping in an error? Just like, for instance, they might be slaying them people for worshiping Rome, but they might not have really been worshiping Rome. I'm not saying it's controversy what they said. I'm just wondering, am I giving a false appearance when I do stuff like that?
That's a really good question, Mark, and I think that's a really good topic for another time that we can really expound upon and talk greatly in great
Because
detail
when
about
it
that.
talks about people in foreign countries getting their heads cut off for Christianity and stuff,
Mhm.
is it possible that a person is just too scared to say,
Yeah, so that instead,
I don't
they're-
want my head cut off?
while
you know what I
everyone
mean?
else is bowing to the east for Allah or whatever, that person is bowing
I
at
just-
the same time for God. That's a good question, and that's going to be a good topic for a coming class.
Okay.
So I appreciate that question. I'm going to write that one down. You know what? We're going to finish this up. I don't care if the bell rung. Bell doesn't dismiss you. I dismiss you. All right. Notice a call to spiritual understanding. He says, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. This calls believers to discernment, attention, and faithfulness. If you are of the faithful, if you will remain faithful despite what the evil will do, despite that everyone else wants to follow the beast, if you will remain faithful, there is victory in Christ, even if you die at the hands of this beast. There's a principle of divine justice here in chapter 13 and verse 10. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword, with the sword he must he be slain. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. God repays evil with justice. Persecutors will themselves face judgment. So while it seems, there are many times, especially in this world, where it seems like people who are doing the wrong thing are getting off scot-free. But they're not. And it will torment us, and we will sit there and we will degrade ourselves, and we will go down deeper into the mud thinking, I cannot believe that this person is getting all this stuff, or nothing has happened to this person who is doing something so terrible. But no one escapes the judgment of God. Good or bad, no one will escape that judgment. God repays evil with justice, and persecutors will themselves face judgment. We also notice one last time the patience and faith of the saints. If we stay steadfast while everyone else is worshiping the beast, we stay strong and worship God. There is endurance. Believers are called to be enduring, and steadfast. This is perseverance through the persecution, trust in God's justice, and confidence in ultimate victory. No, we won't have victory on this earth necessarily. Most likely we won't. But the ultimate victory comes from God. The ultimate victory is in Jesus. So, a summary of these passages, we saw the beast blasphemes against God and persecutes the church. Rome functions as Satan's earthly instrument. Persecution is fierce but temporary, and true believers remain faithful despite suffering. Next week, we will talk about the second beast in Revelations 13, 11 through 15. And we will get through that. And the following week, we'll get into what many people want to talk about throughout the world. And that's verse 18 that says, this calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks' time. Maybe 3 weeks' time, but hopefully 2 weeks' time. Good class, everyone.